So, if you want to hide the architectural blueprint for, like, an ancient cosmic vision, where do you put it?
Right, yeah.
Because according to the text we're analyzing today for this deep dive, you basically bury it in a spreadsheet.
A very old spreadsheet.
Yeah, exactly. You hide it in an ancient tribal census. Welcome to the deep dive, by the way. I'm so glad you could join us today because we are looking at something really mind-bending.
It really is.
Mm-hmm.
And, it challenges our modern expectations of these texts.
Oh, totally.
Because when we analyze historical texts, especially from antiquity, we're so conditioned to look for a narrative,
You want the story.
right? We want a story, we want heroes, we want drama. So when we encounter, say, a chapter entirely dedicated to raw demographic data,
Just lists of numbers.
exactly, lists of numbers and logistical assignments, our instinct is to just skip right over it.
Which brings us to the mission for this deep dive today. We are asking you, the listener, to step into the shoes of a biblical historian.
A very patient biblical historian.
Yeah, exactly. Because we're analyzing a section of text that, frankly, most people just ignore. It's Numbers chapter 2 in the Hebrew Bible.
Right.
And on the surface, I mean, it is just this dense, super repetitive list of tribal census data and desert encampment assignments.
It's notoriously dry.
It really is. But, okay, let's unpack this. Because the historical analysis we are exploring today makes this fascinating argument.
It really flips the script.
It does. It posits that this specific list of numbers isn't just, bureaucratic record keeping. The theory from our source material is that every detail acts as a strict mathematical coordinate. Like it's masking a massive, deliberate geometric design.
Yeah, and to really grasp what this analysis is suggesting, we have to look past the numbers as, well, just a mere head count.
Right.
The author of our text argues that if you start viewing these figures as literal architectural blueprints, the entire landscape just shifts.
It becomes a physical map.
Exactly. The ancient camp of Israel, as described in this chapter, was organized into 4 main quadrants surrounding a central hub. And the moment you start treating the text like a spatial puzzle, you realize you might be looking at a carefully constructed map.
Well, I want to build this map with you right now, like visualize it.
That's good.
To understand the overall geometry of this encampment, we first have to establish the anchor point, right?
Right, you need a center.
You can't have a map without a center. And in this text, everything radiates outward from the Levite camp.
Precisely. So in the very center of the layout, you have the tabernacle.
The portable sanctuary.
Right, the portable sanctuary.
Okay.
And arranged immediately around it are the Levites.
Okay, so they're the inner ring.
Yeah, and the instructions are very specific. They place Moses and the priests specifically on the east side of the tabernacle.
Got it.
Then, the 3 distinct families of the Levites, the Kohathites, the Gershonites, and the Merarites, they're assigned to the southwest and north sides, respectively.
So, if we look at this through the lens of modern urban planning, it's essentially the downtown core of a city.
That's a great way to look at it.
You have your central administrative buildings, your vital infrastructure, it's the fixed anchor. And then all the zoning laws for the rest of the population, they have to be built around that specific central square.
That is an excellent way to conceptualize it. And the text actually provides the numerical scaling for this core.
Oh, it gives the exact numbers?
It does. The Levite men numbered roughly 22,300.
Okay, 22,300.
Yeah. Now, there is an important demographic caveat the author notes here, just to be accurate to the source.
Right, because of how they counted back then.
Exactly. Ancient census figures of this type generally only counted military-aged men.
Right, so it's not the total population.
No, not at all. If you factor in women, children, and the elderly, the actual population of this central hub was significantly larger.
But for the blueprint, that doesn't really matter.
Right, exactly. For the sake of uncovering this structural blueprint, the analysis just uses these raw, recorded census numbers as functional units of measurement.
I see. So the exact physical footprint, like whether that central square was a half-mile wide or 2 miles wide, in reality, it doesn't fundamentally change the underlying geometry.
No, the proportions stay the same.
Right. So that block of 22,300 men represents our baseline unit of width.
Exactly. And, this raises an important question.
Which is?
Well, if the Levite camp represents a fixed central square of a specific width, how did the estimated 2 million other people physically arrange themselves around it?
That is a lot of people to organize.
It is. Because historically speaking, nomadic tribes don't typically organize themselves into rigid squares.
Right. I mean, if I'm leading a massive group of people through a harsh desert environment, my instinct is to form a circle.
The standard wagon circle.
Exactly.
Hmm.
You put the livestock and the vulnerable people in the middle, and you circle the wagons, so to speak, for defense against the elements or against predators.
It's the most practical shape.
But this text completely rejects that natural nomadic instinct.
It does. Completely. And this is where the strict interpretation of their encampment laws comes into focus.
The zoning laws.
Right, the ancient zoning laws.
Yeah.
The instructions in Numbers 2 dictate cardinal directions with absolute rigidity.
Like non-negotiable directions.
Exactly. For instance, the camp of Judah, which was actually a coalition of 3 tribes with Judah as the lead, was commanded to camp on the east.
Okay.
Reuben and his coalition on the south, Ephraim on the west, Dan on the north.
But wait, let me jump in here, because when you say on the east, I'm trying to picture this practically.
Sure.
Does the text just mean the general eastern hemisphere of the camp? Like anyone to the right of the tabernacle is technically east?
According to this specific historical analysis, no.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the author argues that they adhered to these instructions with an intense literal geometry. The command was to camp east.
Okay.
So if a family pitched their tent in the southeast, they're technically neither east nor south.
Oh, wow. I didn't think about it like that.
Right, they are violating the boundary conditions set by the text.
Wait, so you're telling me it's like an architectural extrusion?
Extrusion is a great word for it.
Like drawing a straight line outward from the edges of the central Levite camp, and no one is allowed to spill over into the corners?
That is exactly what the source material is arguing.
Hmm.
Therefore, a literal adherence to the law meant they could only occupy the exact width of that central Levite camp.
And just push outward.
Right, extending outward in 4 distinct straight columns.
So they're leaving prime real estate completely
It's
empty.
absolutely empty.
That creates a pretty wild reality on the ground. I mean, if you follow that rule to the absolute letter, it means those diagonal regions, like the southeast, the southwest, the northeast, the northwest, they are totally void of people.
Yes, the analysis refers to these areas as verboten, or forbidden zones.
Forbidden zones, that is so strict.
It is, but that is the logical conclusion of the geometry. The width of each of the 4 outer camps is permanently locked to the width of the central Levite camp.
They cannot fan out.
No, they cannot fan out. They cannot curve their borders to fill the empty space.
Even if they need the room.
Even then. The text's tribal populations and their assigned directions force this really unique, rigid layout.
Okay, but applying that constraint immediately creates a massive logistical headache.
Oh, absolutely.
Because let's look at the actual numbers provided in the text.
Let's do the math.
Yeah, so Judah, sitting in the east, is huge. Their coalition has a census count of 186,400.
A massive group.
Right. And then you have Reuben in the south and Dan in the north, both hovering around like 150,000.
Okay.
And Ephraim in the west is the smallest at 108,100.
Right.
So if the width of their camps is permanently capped by that downtown Levite core, which was only 22,300, how do you fit such vastly different population sizes into those strict zones?
It's a great question.
Do the larger tribes just like pack their tents incredibly close together, living on top of each other?
I mean, that would be one practical solution, sure.
Yeah.
But the analysis suggests a much more mathematical approach to the desert landscape.
Okay, what does that look like?
Well, if the density of the encampment remained relatively uniform,
Right.
which is a standard assumption for ancient tribal living conditions.
Right, everyone needs roughly the same amount of space for a tent and animals.
Exactly. So if density is uniform, the only way to accommodate larger populations within a fixed width is through proportional length.
Oh, meaning they just have to build further out into the desert.
Exactly. Let's break down how these specific census figures dictate physical spatial proportions.
Let's do it.
We know the width is fixed, right? They cannot expand horizontally into those verboten diagonal zones.
Because of the strict cardinal rules?
Right. Therefore, a camp with a larger population must extend further backward,
Just pushing further away from the center?
pushing its outer boundary in a straight line away from the center.
Okay. I guess it's like pouring water into a trench.
A trench, yeah, I like that.
Like, the width of the trench doesn't change, so if you pour twice as much water in, it just travels twice as far down the line?
That is a very accurate analogy. And when we analyze the numerical scaling between the central Levite camp, our baseline unit of roughly 22,300,
All right.
and the surrounding tribes, the spatial impact becomes strikingly clear.
The math of the desert.
Exactly. Judah's camp is driven by a population of over 186,000.
Wow.
Mathematically, that is more than 8 times the size of the central hub.
So their arm stretches out 8 units long.
Yes. While Ephraim's camp in the west, at roughly 108,000, is only about 5 times the size of the center.
Which means the layout isn't just determined by who wants to live where.
No, not at all.
It is dictated purely by the raw data.
Exactly.
Like Judah has to stretch far, far out to the east just to fit everyone in.
Right.
Ephraim is a significantly shorter column pushing to the west,
Mm-hmm.
and Reuben and Dan are nearly symmetrical, stretching out to the south and north.
And this is where the author invites us to step back and ask what this mathematically scaled structure actually looked like in the physical world.
Yes, to really visualize this, we need to get off the ground.
We need a different perspective.
Right. I want you, the listener, to imagine pulling up a modern satellite map or taking a drone high up into the sky above the ancient Sinai Peninsula.
Like a helicopter time machine.
Exactly. We're looking directly down at this massive encampment spread out across the sand.
What's fascinating here is that this aerial visualization isn't just a modern thought experiment.
Oh, really?
No, the author connects this top-down perspective to a specific historical narrative found later in the text.
Okay.
And in Numbers chapter 24, it involves a figure named Balaam.
Oh, right, Balaam. He is a really interesting character in the broader context of the text.
He is.
Because he wasn't an Israelite, right? He was a foreign seer or a prophet hired by a rival king.
Right, a Moabite king hired him to basically curse the Israelite camp.
Got it.
And the text describes Balaam being taken up to a high peak, the top of Mount Peor.
Okay, so he's getting that aerial view.
Exactly. He's up high where he could look down upon the entire encampment of Israel spread out in the valley below.
The king is probably expecting him to see just this vulnerable, chaotic mass of nomads.
Right, and deliver a devastating curse.
But he doesn't.
No. Instead, Balaam looks down and essentially says, "How beautiful are your tents."
Wow.
The theory we are examining argues that what Balaam actually saw from that mountain peak was the stark, undeniable geometry of these numbers played out in physical space.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting.
Go for it.
When you map out the exact parameters we just discussed, the fixed central width, the empty forbidden corners, those verboten zones, and the precise proportional lengths dictated by the census, you get a very specific shape.
You do.
You have a massive eastern arm for Judah. You have a noticeably shorter western arm for Ephraim.
Right.
And you have 2 equal-length northern and southern arms for Dan and Reuben.
And what does that look like?
When you look down from that drone's eye view, the geometric layout forced by the census data forms a perfect cross.
It is a striking structural realization.
It's mind-blowing.
And according to this interpretation, the numbers aren't arbitrary, and they aren't just dry administrative records.
No, they're purposeful.
They serve as the mathematical foundation for a massive symbol stamped into the desert floor.
Now, a casual reader could easily just stop there.
Sure.
You could just say, wow, what an interesting geometric coincidence that the populations worked out that way, and move on.
You could, but the analysis insists we go one step deeper.
Right.
It argues that to understand the ultimate purpose of this text, we have to look at the symbology that exists within that shape.
The details inside the camp.
Right, because we have to remember how ancient militaries and tribes organized themselves.
They weren't just casually walking around.
Exactly. This wasn't just a static settlement. It was a mobilized procession.
Okay.
Each of the 4 main outer camps was led by a specific banner, an ensign, which served as the rallying point for those tribes.
And the text gives us historical clues about what was on those banners, doesn't it?
It does.
Like, Judah's symbol leading that massive eastern arm of the cross was the lion.
The lion of the tribe of Judah.
Exactly. A motif that echoes throughout ancient literature.
Mm-hmm.
And the analysis points out the 4 primary ensigns representing these outer extremities. They are the lion, the ox, the man, and the eagle.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture
Yeah.
of ancient Near Eastern culture, those specific symbols carry immense weight.
They're not just random animals they picked out of a hat.
No, they aren't random animal choices at all. In antiquity, these four figures were heavily associated with cosmic power and divine guardianship.
Oh, like those massive statues guarding temples.
Exactly. You see variations of them in Babylonian and Assyrian art constantly.
Right.
Creatures with the body of a bull, the wings of an eagle, the face of a man, and the strength of a lion.
It's all about dominion, right? Like
Yeah.
the lion representing wild beasts, the ox representing domesticated strength, the eagle for the sky, and humanity representing intellect.
Exactly. But the author makes a very specific textual connection here regarding the Hebrew Bible.
Right, because these exact faces show up again later.
They do. The analysis points out that these exact four faces, the lion, the ox, the man, and the eagle, match identically with the descriptions of the cherubim.
The divine beings.
Yes, the divine beings described in later prophetic literature.
Right. You see those exact four faces in the visions of Ezekiel chapter 1 and again in the book of Revelation chapter 4.
Yes, and in those texts, the prophets describe looking into the heavenly realm.
And what do they see?
They see the throne of God flanked on four sides by these distinct entities,
Yeah.
the lion, the ox, the man, and the eagle.
Wow. Okay. So when you synthesize all this data according to the author's theory,
A cohesive picture emerges.
a really wild picture. I mean,
Yeah.
you have the central hub containing the tabernacle.
Which is the localized presence of the divine.
Right. Then you have the strict adherence to cardinal directions, creating the cross shape. And at the far edges of that shape, you have the banners of the lion, the ox, the man, and the eagle flapping in the wind.
Yes. The theory concludes that this layout wasn't just a housing assignment based on available real estate.
Not at all.
No. It posits that the encampment was designed as a living, physical macro model of the divine throne room.
Rendered in the shape of a cross.
Exactly. Spanning miles across the desert floor.
Which fundamentally changes how you view a chapter of ancient census data.
It really does.
What starts out reading like a painfully tedious spreadsheet.
The kind you just want to skip over.
Right. It actually translates into an intricate, proportionally scaled architectural blueprint.
Yes.
We started this deep dive talking about like ancient zoning laws, and we've ended up uncovering a theory about a massive aerial cosmic symbol.
It's incredible, and it highlights a crucial aspect of historical analysis for you, the listener.
Which is?
Sometimes the most intricate and calculated designs are hidden within the densest, most numerical source materials.
The stuff we usually ignore.
Right. It requires a willingness to look at the data from multiple angles, to map it out, to apply the constraint to the text literally, and just see where the geometry leads.
So what does this all mean? It means context is everything.
Absolutely.
Without understanding the literal boundary rules and the cultural weight of those banners, the census numbers are just data points on a page.
It's boring numbers.
But when you apply those rules, they build an entire world.
A world that requires us to step back and look at the physical realities of ancient texts, rather than just reading them as abstract philosophy.
Well said. And as we wrap up the spatial puzzle, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over.
Okay, lay it on us.
If we accept the premise of this geometric layout, where the proportions were dictated entirely by precise census numbers,
Right.
and the borders had to be strictly straight to leave those diagonal corners perfectly empty,
Those verboten zones.
right, it forces a massive question about logistics.
Those-
How did an ancient nomadic people survey, measure, and coordinate such precise geometric boundaries across miles of shifting desert sand,
That's a great point.
and entirely without modern equipment?
Just using line of sight, maybe?
I mean, just imagine the daily coordination required to keep those verboten zones perfectly clear of wandering tents and livestock as the population shifted and moved.
It would be a monumental task.
It really makes you reconsider the level of technical precision that might have existed in the ancient world.
It certainly does.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep digging into those details, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us on this hour on the Archive Hour. Join us on our next hour as we bring you more adventures from the Bible.